Hello, LG. Bryson66 here, bringing you the first episode of LGHL Access for Season 21. Glad to be back and glad to have all you guys watching. Pretty short off season. We're entering Season 21, where it's a short 6 weeks due to trying to get this last season in before we hopefully make the smooth transition to the Xbox One. I somewhat doubt that, but let's hope it is. This episode's going to be short and sweet. Going to give you guys a top 10 power ranking for each conference with a roster breakdown on how they did through the offseason and bidding. A lot of teams changing hands. It was tough. I did a top 10, so, kind of had to really make sure I was checking myself here. I kind of scrambled a little bit on this episode, guys, so I do apologize for the what may seem lacked effort on this episode. I just got back from vacation, so didn't really have too much time, but I wanted to make sure I got you guys an episode before we kicked off the season. We're going to start with the East. I excluded my Islanders, of course. Don't want to give you guys a biased opinion. So we're going to start at number 10, who I have listed as the Ottawa Senators. Ottawa is being ran by Topher, who has decided to play goalie this season. General manager, Make Your Luck. Good defenseman. GMing for him. I kind of liked what they did in bidding. They went with what was best available. There was one thing that was tricky this bidding was that you either greatly paid for somebody you liked, or you still paid quite a bit for somebody that wasn't even nowhere near worth it. You paid almost 3-4 mil for what would be a 500K player. The bidding was shallow. It was tough this season, especially considering a lot of guys making good moves to try and keep players on multi-year deals and getting them re-signed and not allowing them to go into bidding for that reason. So they picked up Blick, played in Philly last season. Blick's a very good forward. They picked up Sty. As far as forwards go, that's probably their two best guys they've picked up. They got Red Serpent, Datsuk 13, G-Stat I've seen before in the NHL. So, some decent forwards. It's definitely not the Ottawa we were used to seeing last season. On defense, they have Hot Rivet, $6.5 million, quite steep. But if you're going to pay for a defenseman that has any idea what they're doing, you're going to pay steep. Of course, they have Luck, who is the general manager, and Jeremy, I believe they just acquired from Nashville. And then between the pipes, they have Topher and Zeno. My comment on this team is I think, and this is going to be a lot of teams, I feel like I'm going to be repeating myself. They lack, I think, the first line depth that some of these other teams may have. Unless Blick can be carrying people and Rivet, this team's going to be in trouble. So if Blick and Rivet can handle the first lines, I think Ottawa will be an average team and will be middle of the pack and could very well hit that last playoff spot. But the defense, a little shaky. I know Luck's a good defenseman in Rivet, but outside of that, it kind of drops off. So this team's got a lot to prove here at the start of the season. But I think they can come to it if Topher and Zeno can step up and win some games for them. So that's Ottawa at number 10. So moving on to number 9, I have Detroit Red Wings. Owner is Zinky Poo with GM Obnoxious. They, again, I think they lack defense, just like Ottawa. I think their goaltending is a little weaker than Ottawa's, but they do have some good forwards. They picked up Buddy Roberts, who most people joke about, but Buddy Roberts had a great season last season. $5 million, is steep, of course, for any player. I'm going to say that with everybody. $5 million is going to be a steep price, but he proved himself last season as a good player, so good pickup for Detroit. They also they had Hopkins carrying over into this season. People can say what they want about Hopkins. He stayed dedicated last season, from what it seemed. He was on Arizona, who struggled at times, and so say what you want, but $4 million for Hopkins and a guy that plays the game often, not a bad player to have. And they also acquired Hellcat at $6,250,000, which is, I believe, doubled of what his salary was last season. Big questions, like I said, on defense. Widowmaker, I can never pronounce him. Neomop, I guess. Uh, their highest paid defenseman, and then in net they have King Mrazek and Titletown. So little question marks there on the defense and goaltending. Hopefully Zinky Poo is up to something that I'm unaware of. But I mean, Detroit's got the forwards. They've got good forwards. It just doesn't matter how good your forwards are sometimes. If the defense can't get to the puck, then you're going to struggle. But Detroit did what they could with what's available in bidding, I think is safe to say. Moving on here to number 8, I've got the Philly Flyers. Owner, Ricochet. Love you, Rick. With general manager, Easy Mac. Solid GM to put in there, considering I couldn't imagine what Mac would have been. Delisle is the AGM. Great salary for Delisle, $1,750,000. Great center to have. Other centers on the team, Ball Saddle, Genetic. This team's got pretty good depth. I like what Rick did. Rick obviously is going to be playing the first lines. Dayman at left D, DC Shoe, a great salary for a player like him. He probably would have went much more in bidding if I believe he was re-signed. They also have Polar Panda at left wing. They have Argue at right wing. Some good forwards. I definitely can say that if you're going to see a first line here, it's going to consist of three of these 4 forwards, and that's Panda, Delisle, Ball Saddle, or Easy Mac. So I like what they have. It's just whether or not those guys can compete. Defense, I don't think will be an issue. Rick will, I think, hold his own pretty well there, right, D. What I do like is between the pipes, they got your boy who played fantastic on Dallas, but that was behind a pretty good defense. So we're going to see what your boy's all about if he can step up and make these big saves and win some games for Philly. They also got KPY in net, good old Salmon Pads. KPY can be a pretty good goalie at times as well. So I think so far that the 3 teams I went through so far, I think Philly's definitely got the best goaltending of those 3 teams. So moving on to number 7, the Boston Bruins, led by owner legendary Kev, general manager Demers. Through bidding, I think they did a pretty good job, well done. They picked up some, like I said, the best of what they could. He grabbed Kopitar, XX at center. They have Crosscheck also at center for third line. I saw Crosscheck play, and I know some of you may laugh, but I thought he wasn't that bad of a forward. $500K, a guy that plays the game frequently, can't go wrong there. Also at forward, they have Hubert, X89, $3.5 million. Q-Spliff, $3,250,000. They picked up cheaper forwards and Victimize, SPDR at $1,750,000, and then Random Meat at $2 million, which I believe Meat was that price last season as well. On defense, of course, we mentioned the general manager Demers. They also picked up LaFonda, like a Sambude, Canuck 515, Ninja Blades. I like their defense. I think LaFonda and Demers can definitely be a better pairing, based on what's available. Kev, I think, put together a pretty good team, considering if Kev and Kopitar are going to play first and second line center. I think that establishes some depth. I think your biggest questions here in the Bruins is going to be the wingers. We move on to their goalies. They have Norris, nominee to netminder, Foote, and then they also have the Master I Am, formerly known as Cookie. Cookie, I think, is a fantastic goalie. Obviously, played Pro Series with the guy, but I really like what Kev did with this team. I think there's a lot of balance. If their wingers and their third line can really step up, I think Boston is going to be a better team than what I ranked them. I only ranked them this low because their wingers just aren't top notch as far as I can tell. They did what they could. If those guys step up, then Boston's going to be a pretty good team this season. Moving on, number 6, we've got the Tampa Bay Lightning. Owner Braden Hall, playing right D this season with general manager James X22, formerly Florida's GM with Yargage. They did a lot of off-season moves, acquiring Killer Canadian, T. Logan, and I believe that's just those two through the and Mac, I believe. I don't know. Mac was in bidding. Acquiring those two through trades, which is T. Logan at $3,750,000 is an excellent price considering what everyone was their going rates were. I like this team's forwards. Excellent forwards. James is a great right wing. They have prime time. Killer Canadian. If he's playing third lines, Canadian clearly proved he can very well hold his own like he did in Ottawa. Won't be playing with his partner in crime. Yeah, I'll think of his name, Bolton Race. Canadian won't be with Bolts, but I think he'll be fine without him. They also acquired T. Logan. T. Logan. I already said that. They acquired Grimm for $9.5 million. Kind of steep, but Grimm is a good forward. And like I said, what's available, that's you're gonna have to pay for it. So I like what the Lightning has on forwards. I think they've got easily two lines, even a third line that could win games. So their forwards are there. Now we move on to the defense, and it's just a big question mark. Burning Wolves, the fake Gary Guru 93, Raining Love, a Tribe CQ, and I don't see anything that's even a second line D pairing. Maybe Braden Hall, the owner, is a second line, but I think unless this defense is going to surprise us, they're going to struggle defensively. There's going to be a lot of pressure onto the goalies, which I already mentioned. They have Mac at $2 million, and then they acquired Golski through bidding. Golski's been playing with Gergian Dog. Golski is a good goalie at times, sometimes isn't. So, unless these two goalies stand on their head and bail their defense out, I don't know. I may have overranked Tampa Bay, but one thing's for sure, that if the forwards do get the puck, they're going to put up a lot of points. They definitely have the depth at forward to do some damage. So I like what Tampa Bay did, minus defensively. So Tampa Bay's got a lot of questions to answer here on defense in the first couple weeks of the season. Next up, at number 5, I have the Buffalo Sabres, owned by Brando Vito, with general manager Terry Torr, who RFA'd to center and went pretty high in price, so gave him the GM, wiped that salary. They have MVP coming back for his third season under the $6,250,000, which isn't too bad for MVP considering the bidding. They also acquired Hext through trades with Columbus. Hext is a good player, $3.5 million. Defensively, Mud Dog was on San Jose last season. I believe they've gotten him through bidding. They also have Somni, Langster, Epors, and then Brando as the owner. An average defense. I'm not sure if there's a top-notch first line there, but there's definitely maybe 2 second-line D pairings there. So Buffalo's got a good team as far as they've got a first line with Terry Torr. I'm assuming MVP playing together. That'll be a first line that's going to win some games, and then second line I'm assuming they'll have Hext and a couple other guys there. So. And I like what they have in net with Mindhunter. That guy showed some pretty good potential at times during the season. I remember him being in our lineup of the week. So Buffalo's got a good team. Again, I think I haven't stated this yet, but I think the East is extremely weak considering how it was last season. So, I think Buffalo has the opportunity to, jump the gun here, and I think they're going to be the dark horse. I think a lot of teams are going to underestimate them, and I think they're going to do fairly well and definitely make some noise in the East. After Buffalo, at number 4, I have the Florida Panthers, owned by Ahern with general manager Rammard. Rammard's playing right wing this season. The reason why I gave these guys a high rating is salary-wise, they still got $4,250,000 left over with a full roster, and I feel they've got an excellent team. Of course, they have the Willard Crass line. Anybody can say what they want, but that line fairly does well. Then they also have they grabbed Yargage at a mill. Of course, Yargage saying, what if Yargage is here or not? If he is, $1 million for a guy that definitely lives for it, like some of us do. It's a good pickup. Uh, I think if you're looking at their at salaries and positions, I would guess their first line is going to be Asian, Big League Balla, and Rammered. Really not a bad first line. I think what I like the most about their team is just the salary they have left over. They can make moves and take on even more big contracts. And I think all three of their lines are capable of winning games easily. And if their forwards aren't good with depth, you move on to their defense. And Ahern, of course, is always a very good defenseman. But I like Boney at $3 million. I think that's an incredible contract for him. A pack of midgets at $2 million, $250. He made some noise last season. I believe he was a Norris nominee, if my memory serves me right. And then you move on to goalies. Tyrant played fantastic. Could have been a Vezina. I believe he was a Vezina finalist as well. And they picked up Elegant Mullet and Bidding, who is a decent backup at $750K. So I like what Florida has. Their management are good players. They've got a lot of depth for not paying too much. So I mean, Florida right now is I consider them a good team, but I think they can be even better if they make the right trades and put that salary in places that are needed for this team. So, like where Florida's at right now, they could be in an even more dangerous spot come into the season, the playoffs. Next up, these next three teams were difficult to. I'm pretty sure it's pretty obvious who the three teams are, but they were hard to organize. Number 3, I went with the Canes. If I didn't play last season, if I didn't play at all until this season, I wouldn't have even ranked the Canes as high. But after playing them in the postseason last season, this is a good team. Forward wise, they've got some extremely good depth. You got Cooker, AJ, Canucks, Manship, and then they questionably for me they picked up X-Bobs at $8.5 million. X-Bob's just coming back after a bit of a break here, coming into the last season of the 360. Like most people are going to say, it's a lot for X-Bobs, but, like I've been saying this whole show so far, you're going to have to pay for anybody that has a name here. The only thing that concerns me with Carolina, and I'm sorry, yeah, the owner is Hold My D, and general manager is like Art Bustle. They're both playing defense. What I was going to get to is the defense that kind of worries me with this team. They've got Hold My D, who's a decent defenseman, and I got Puzzle, who's a phenomenal defenseman. But after that, I'm not sure what they're going to do defensively. Some different names. I love the forwards. The forwards, they've got 3 lines that are going to do well. I didn't mention Class Act, but that's a guy that most people don't like, but you can't deny, he has played well. And the 2 biggest question marks for this team is their goaltending and their defensemen. They have Blizz coming back this season, who I thought played pretty well when we played against him in the postseason. And then they picked up Brett Rad at $2.5 million. And unless I'm completely lost, I don't know who he is. Played in Grand Rapids, which is Detroit's affiliate last season, and did have very good numbers. He had a 4.6 GAA through 8 games. So, those goalies have a lot to prove. If Blizz and Brett Rad can be top goalies in this league, then I think Carolina's going to have no issues and repeat the same dominance they had last season. They have the forwards to do it. Just a matter of whether or not the second and third line defensemen and the goalies step up. They step up. Carolina's going to be a dangerous team. At number 2, we've got the Stanley Cup winning Montreal Canadiens, with owner Global returning, looking to go for back-to-back hardware here. General manager King Scavuzzo. They've got Marquette here at $3.5 million. Surprisingly, a cheap pickup there. They also have JJO returning, young prodigy returning. I'm not sure this team is where it was last season. You look at last season, the second line, they had Cakes, I believe, maybe, as their second line. Now they have the Dong Wizard and Wes. Unless I'm missing something, I'm not sure if those two could fill the shoes of Cakes. But I think compared to where all these other teams stand right now, Montreal is still a very, very good team. Um, you know, they've got excellent forwards still. Like I just mentioned, they went for Strizzy in bidding. I think $7 million for Strizzy is pretty fair. I don't know, what his availability is like and everything. I'm sure it's fine. I see Strizzy on fairly often. Like I said, 7 mil compared to what all these other guys are going for. 7 mil for Strizzy is kind of fair. On defense, of course, I mentioned Global. They put $8.5 million on Deceased Goblin. A lot of people were laughing about that because I believe they just put the 8.5 right on it. Goblin's worth it. He's an excellent defenseman. And then left defenseman, the only ones I can notice here are Mr. Blainer. Mr. Blainer played on the island last season and was shipped around a lot during the offseason. Blainer's another pretty good defenseman. He's not a first liner, but he can definitely prove a lot of people wrong. So I'd like to see him on Montreal because he'll be able to play with some pretty good talent and get to show what he's capable of. And then in net, they have Yancer, X84, and Superstar. I believe last season they had Hurley on that cup run. Montreal is a good team. They got Scavuzzo and Marquette. I'm not sure if JJ or Prodigy is going to be playing with them or Eichel. But either way, if JJ can keep up his performance from last season, he won the Calder rookie season. If they have the depth, offensively and defensively, they've got two good defensemen with Global and Goblin. I think it's just going to rely on the defense again. Like most teams, defense is an issue. So if those other four defensemen can step up for Montreal, I see no problems with Montreal moving on and contending for another cup again this season. And number one, we've got the New Jersey Devils. Here's a team that is not struggling with defense. With owner Batten, I Smash Fatties, and general manager Matt the Cool Cat, this team's got some great depth. I think this team is got the best defense in the league. I think there's only one other team that can really compete with them defensively. And you look. Let's start with forward before we get into the defense. They picked up Dork for $7,750,000 and Potato for 4.5, assuming those two play together. That's a decent line. I mean, you're paying a lot for both of them, but in this league, they're going to do fine as a line. They also grabbed Heimbecker at $750K, the All-Star Heimbecker. They also had Copes and Heat fan carrying over into this season. I believe they were already on New Jersey at the end of last season. And acquired Skid Marquee at $500K. And of course, Matt at left wing is a good piece to have for offense. I like what they have offensively. They've got definitely two lines, possibly even three great lines with Copes and Heat fan. Not sure if those two are playing together or not. Three lines that are going to be able to compete and cause problems. Now, moving on defensively, I think this team, I mean, just they've got excellent defensemen. Batten is a great defenseman to start with. Obviously, no salary there because he's the owner. Kopitar switched from goalie to defense. He's only at $1 million, which isn't too bad. I've seen Kopitar play skater. He's a decent skater. Many people underrate him. And the next three here are just great defensemen, and I feel are on pretty good contracts considering what was the average pay for some of these good players. Gibby at $3 million, I believe he was re-signed. Suter made the switch from center to defense. Batten acquired his rights before RFA and then matched the $7.5 million, which is without a doubt fair for Suter. And then I think Cousin AVI at $1 million is a pretty good salary for him. This team's got great depth at defense. great depth at forward. And then we move on to goalies. They have Westerhoff and Zero Choice. From my understanding, Zero Choice isn't having the best availability. If he can be the goalie like he was on Washington and can play in a starter role, Jersey is going to have no issues this season. And I'd be surprised if they don't take first in the East this season. So that's the East. We're going to move on to the West here. The West was tough. It's tough when you do 10 teams. I know I said that already, but picking those last couple teams is a little rough. We're going to start out with number 10. Number 10, I know I'm going to get some shit for, but I got to hand it to him. I'm going to give it to the Canucks here. Nicky W. As the owner, playing right wing this season, not defense. A little questionable there. I think Nicky W. can play defense fairly well. I'm not sure how he is at right wing. General manager Duster Dan. I believe Dan was on Nashville last season, so not a bad choice for general manager. Bidding wise, they paid out the wazoo for Fox and Stick. The only question there is that who is going to center that line, or if Stick plays center, who's going to right wing that line? I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Nicky did what he could, and he went out and got two guys that like playing together. I know a lot of people don't consider Fox and Stick a first line, but Fox put up great numbers last season. He's getting paid this season, so I think it's only a matter of time to see how these forwards work out. As far as second and third line, it's going to be a lot of questions. Those guys are going to definitely need to step up. I think Fox and Stick are going to put up numbers. There's no doubt about that. With Duster Dan as the GM and Sedin as the backup, I think you've got decent goalies, better than what Vancouver's had before. And then we move on to defense, and this is where it gets scary. No clear-cut first line there. Maybe at best a bottom second line, but this defense is going to be relied on heavily in order for this team to succeed. You look at they've got notable guys: Heisenberg at $2 million, Krug 47 at $500K, Maverick at $2 million, $750. Cola's life is actually not a bad defenseman, but he's on IR currently, so I'm not sure what the situation is there. They got the media guru, F5 Penguin, and of course everyone's favorite, Sean 1126. Again, Sean, I think, is a decent defenseman if his head's on the right place. So, I mean, like I said, there's no first lines there for defensemen. I think I hope it works out for Nicky. He did what he could. He went with what was available, just like most teams here, and at least he went and got two forwards that made sense together, and not just got random guys and plugged them together. So it's going to be interesting to see how Vancouver does. The West, I think, is extremely difficult. So, I mean, if Vancouver was in the East, I think they'd have a little bit more of a fighting chance. But in the West here, I think defensively they're going to be in a lot of trouble when they run into some of these teams. So, moving on to number 9, the Chicago Blackhawks. New owner here. I'm a boss 41-0 and GM Kucherov. Kucherov was the general manager last season with Jay Fonz. Jay Fonz is back on the team at $3,250,000, which honestly isn't a terrible salary considering the going price for some of these defensemen. Stick to defense beings were there. They also acquired Tenner in defense. Tenner is a great defenseman, $6.5 million. Again, not terrible of a price for him. Defensively, I think you can rely on Tenner to be a first-line D-man, and Jay Fonz is your second line. The only question is how the rest of these defensemen are going to work out. I also like what they got in goalie with B. Cripps at $3,750,000. A little steep, but if you're going to go for a goalie like Cripps or any of those goalies that are known as NHLers, you're going to have to pay quite a bit. Forward wise, I'm a boss and Kucherov played very well last season. They played well. They're a good line. I don't want to call them a first line, but I definitely want to say that they they're going to put up a lot of points. Now, after that, I'm not sure what you're going to expect here. They have Elite Hydro, Ramirzma, C Fueler 93. They have Williams, the Hype. No, I mean Hydro could be their second line, but I mean it's a very questionable second and third line for the Chicago forwards. They definitely have the goaltending. They have decent defense. They have a good line with Boss and Kucherov. After that, I'm unsure. Only time will tell how good this team's going to be. Like I said, the West is difficult, so they're going to need that second line, at least the second line, to step up and get some wins in order for this team to make the postseason. Next up, we've got the Minnesota Wild with owner Sports Fanatic. He picked up general manager I Beat Up Cakes, who came off his cup victory with the Montreal Habs. Cakes is playing with other forwards as Webb at $4 million, Naslin at $2.5 million. Reaper went for $3 million, a little high for Reaper, but Reaper's a good center. Ryan Six at $2.5 million, Chum Lee at $4,250. I believe Chum Lee was a re-sign. And they also have Steeler at $500K. As far as forwards go, I like Reaper. He's always been a third liner, so I'm not sure if Reaper or Dimitri is going to be the second line of this team. Webb at $4 million isn't bad. Webb was even more than that last bidding. So, I mean, and Ryan's a good forward as well. So, Minnesota, Cakes is a clear-cut first-line center. He won a cup playing as I felt as the second-line center because of Scavuzzo on that team. So, a little more pressure on Cakes this season. You move on to defense here of the team. And again, just like Vancouver, I feel maybe no clear-cut first line, but I think they've got a couple second-line pairings. Melissa farted. God, I can't remember his name. Could be a first liner, but I think as far as who pairs with him, that'll be the question. Sports is a good guy. He's a good defenseman. I wouldn't consider him a first liner, but they definitely got. He's a decent defenseman. Puest is another. I like Puest a lot, and I feel at $2 million that's pretty cheap for him. So they also have Teabag Frenzy at $1 million. They've got average defensemen, no elite top echelon defensemen, but this team is going to be, I think, middle of the pack. They're going to rely heavily on Cakes and his line to get it done and win games. And as far as goalies go, I did that $500K for a backup. Goalie can't if he is playing backup. And they also have goalie Cancer, who I've seen him play, and he can make some pretty good saves. So I would like to see what Minnesota does with the spare cash they have at $2 million, $250. I'd like to see them maybe get another defenseman to play with Melissa farted, and unless I'm proven wrong, and they've got the first D pairing already. But regardless if they do or they don't, they have a little bit of cash to work with if things don't work out. I think there will be no questions with Cakes, Ryan, and Reaper. I think those three will be a pretty good forwards. Chumley, of course, will do well. But the rest, it's a question mark for Minnesota. I normally would rank any team that Cakes is on a little higher, but with the company he has, it maybe he might have some issues to start the season. Moving on to number 7. This team dropped off quite a bit from where they were. I have the Nashville Predators, returning owner A1 Freak. Now has general manager Bradley. He did at Bass last season. Freak comes back with a less threatening forwards. I think a better defense and probably the same rating as for the goaltending. They acquired Seaward in bidding. They acquired Hatemaker through trade for Calgary. They actually have King Brad on waivers currently. So we're looking at Slippery Malkin, Knight, Camdew as other forwards there. They definitely have Bradley, as obviously the first liner there. As far as who's centering with them, might be A1 Freak. I thought A1 Freak played fairly well last season for a guy that people don't consider a first liner. I thought he played fairly well last season. Seward is another decent forward and Hatemaker. So I think they've got the centers. Obviously, they have Bradley. Savard had a pretty good season, but he was also playing with Bradley and Fiotendi. So I think this team's going to rely heavily on those right wings to step up. They definitely have got decent forwards, but to compete in this Western Conference, they're going to need to step up. Defensively, I'm a true Canadian. I feel is on a great salary at $750K. Slamorama's playing right defense this season, $3 million, $250 for him. SF 1649ers, $750K, a cheap price for him, and they have Shoehead at 5.5. So they've got good defense. They've got cheap, good defensemen as well. Again, first liner might be questionable there who that might be, but they definitely have got some good forwards that are going to put up goals. So I don't think there'll be too much pressure on the defense. But it's safe to say that Nashville took a downgrade from where they were last season. Moving on here to number 6, Calgary. Owner Figs with GM Steve Stefani, also known as Air Raid. I like what Calgary did in bidding. They went for Fiotendi at $10 million. It's a little bit more than what he was last season, but Fiotendi is a clear-cut first liner, and it depends on who he'll be playing with. But this team also has a lot of depth at forward. They have Figaro at left wing. Bones 24 at $1 million, $250. Figs and Air Raid are decent forwards. Figs especially is going to put up the goals. So, I think there's no problems offensively here for Calgary. But we move on here to, let's go to the goalies first with Hardy and Rap God 8, both $500K goalies. I really don't have too much to say on those two. However, I think the issues we're going to see here is that those two goalies are going to be called upon to step up when, Figs isn't going to be able to get it done, or Fiotendi or Air Raid, which I don't see happening too often, but when it does, of course, a goalie is always called upon. We go on to defense. They have Adams at $4 million, $250. I believe he was re-signed. Naglot at $750K. It's a great contract. Oso Country at $1.5 million. They picked up Frank, get pissed on, Ryan McDonough at $5.5 million. Quite a bit of cash for him, but he's a name that everyone recognizes. I think we see Frank and Figs have issues time and time. I think if everyone gets along, this team's going to have no problems. They'll make the playoffs easily. You'll see Figs, of course, like always, going in for the gold title. So Figs put together a pretty good team. I think he did a pretty good job with what was available. They also have $2 million in cash to spare. So if this team, I think, unless those goalies are going to be outstanding, I think that $2 million is going to be used to possibly get an upgrade going into this season here. All right, after Calgary at number 5, I've got the Anaheim Ducks. Owner Jay Rules with general manager Poland's finest. Forward-wise, this team lost Suter and Prime, who both played very well together, but they replaced that talent fairly well. They have Coffey at left wing for $4 million. Coffey was acquired from New Jersey when they traded Suter's rights. They went out and paid some big cash for Bass 91, $10 million. I like what Anaheim has offensively. I think when you look at the centers, is Jay Rule's going to be that first line center? That could be a problem. Jay's a good center, but I think you look, they have Poland's finest, Jay Rule's, Coffey, and Bass. And then after that, there's some question marks. So if those other guys can step up, Anaheim's going to have no issues. They've got good forward depth there. Defensively, they have I'm a Dinosaur Roar, Flo Pooch, now known as Latorius, both at $3.5 million, which isn't bad for those two. think if you look at that, those two are possibly your first line pairing. They also have J-Bid at 3 mil, King Darsock at 500K, Fatal Crow at 3 million, and then behind the pipes, between the pipes, excuse me, they have Cougar 19 and Ono Big Rig. Looks like Jay's going with Big Rig as the big start of this season. He had a pretty decent season last season, so I think if Big Rig can, step up to the calling, Anaheim's going to be a pretty good team. They've got the forward depth to compete against some of the better teams in the West. Just like I said, it's questioned to whether the second and third line is going to be able to get the work done. Moving on to number 4, the Edmonton Oilers. GM turned to owner Lam Moran with his general manager Nuge. Edmonton's could have been a much better team, obviously, if Jay would have stuck around. Not sure what happened there, but too bad Jay had to leave. So now it's Lan and Nuge running the show here in Edmonton. They've got Connor, one and only, at 1 mil 250 at right wing, which is decent. They've got Craig B at center, potentially probably playing with Lan, both good buddies. They have Ward at 6.5 million. They've got good depth at forward. The third line is going to obviously be the question, as it is on most teams. We move to defense here. They have P9 Korea, Saney, Dom QP, Broke You Down, all decent defensemen. And then, of course, they have the Nuge and Dupes pairing from Never Unlucky. So clearly that's going to probably be their first line. And then between the pipes, they have Hurley. I like what Edmonton has. Defensively, they're definitely one of the better teams in the league. I don't think they have the depth at forward like these next couple teams are going to have. But defensively, it's there. So if Edmonton's defense can play the way they're expected to, I think Edmonton's going to be a very good team this season. Moving on to number 3, going to give it to Sweet Lou and the San Jose Sharks. New general manager this season in Nemser. Lou had a good bidding. Didn't really have to go after all that much. He had Batman returning with his 5 mil 750,000. Got Super Saiyan on a re-sign, I believe, at 4 mil 750. Mata is at 2.5 million. Lou's got a good team. He proved it last season. Traded quite a few guys away, but I think bringing Nemser in is always nice. Batman at just under 6 million. He played phenomenally last season, and then Super Saiyan on that re-sign is excellent. Defensively, they've got Mr. Ped, 70x7, Ben 11, Reg, and D-Rock, all pretty good defensemen. They're missing a D-man, which is going to be the big question, although actually I see down here they have a call-up in Flash 65, their draft pick at 2 mil. So once Geezer goes through his waivers, they're going to have 3 million in cash left over, so quite a bit of cap to possibly make a move and upgrade wherever they'd like. I don't see it being goalie because Dolph Ween played phenomenally last season. He had one of his better seasons for sure. And also Lamsey as a backup. Lamsey is a pretty good goalie. I've seen him play, and he's very underrated. And if he'd play more games, I think he'd be he could be a Vezina candidate for sure. So another good team for Lou. The only thing I see with the Sharks this season is that they're not coming out as a surprise. They're coming out as a contender. So they're going to see tougher lines than they did from the start of last season, but I don't see that being an issue. I see San Jose competing and definitely being one of the top teams in the West. Moving on here to number 2, the Winnipeg Jets, owned by Boz, the season 19 Stanley Cup champions. General manager, playmaker, freak on the sticks. You talk about depth at forward. Winnipeg's got it, and goalie. Forwards here, obviously I mentioned Boz and playmaker, and then they also have CJ. If that's their 3 centers, then I feel bad for any team that's got to play them, because that is a scary 3 centers to have. Of course, they have Annie Jemima, Replay Chris, S. which I believe that is Fritcha. Left wings, they've got Nuke Bomb, Quality Children, and Tight Spliff. Quality Children played with Playmaker on Boston last season. Nuke Bomb is a good forward as well, especially at $2.5 million. You know, they've got the depth at forward, so there should be no issues when it comes to scoring. But move on to the defense, and that's where the questions start coming in. Torts 93, 500K. Evil Genius, goalie turned defenseman, 750K. Lucara, 500. Ed Reflex, 1 mil, 250. No one's going to argue this. There's no first line deep pairing there, but you know, with the forwards they've got, I'm sure those forwards are going to help defensively as expected. So there's going to be Winnipeg's going to be a dangerous team. They're right at zero at the salary cap, so if they've got to make a move for defense, well, it's going to be one of those good forwards. You look at goalies. Toast at 3.5, I think, is phenomenal when you consider looking at the prices that some of that some goalies have went for. I think 3.5 for Toast is fantastic. And the backup, Ballsy 15, 2.5, playing goalie again away from defense this season. 2.5 for Ballsy is even phenomenal. I think it's steep for a backup goalie. I feel like that 2.5 may have been able to be used somewhere else, but one thing I will say though is that if you were going to pay a lot of money for a good defenseman, that 2.5 wouldn't have made much of a difference for Boz. So Boz's theory here, hopefully it works out for him. He's got 2 great goalies and 3 fantastic lines of forwards. I don't think there will be an issue, but if a team can figure out those forwards and can put pressure on the defense, then Winnipeg could be looking at some issues. And that's probably why I ranked them number 2, because number 1, no surprise here, we've got the Dallas Stars. Owner Dave, SJU Soccer, with general manager Ovemitz. That's your first line right there, boys. And you look at second and third lines, it gets even better. Not better, but it's still pretty good. I'm not sure which one I can call second or third, but I will tell you what's here alphabetically. We have La Saint QC, Death Studio. I'm imagining Death will be playing with Bolton Rays and Killaby or Head Honcho. It's not a bad line. Death Studio is a good center, can run a pretty good line. And then for the other line, you have LOL, probably Scumbag MVP playing with him. And then one of the left wings, either Dr. D, Head Honcho, Killaby. Awesome center and right wing combos they have. Honcho, I'm sure will play fine at left wing. He played left defense last season for Bridgeport. And then Dr. D, I feel 500K is a pretty decent salary. So great center and right wing combos. And I think, you know, especially LOL at that price, MVP at that price is phenomenal. Dave and Ovemitz, obviously free salaries is awesome as well. But it doesn't stop there as far as the talent Dallas has. The reason why I put Dallas so high is they are carrying 2 out of probably 2 of the best defensemen that were available in bidding, arguably in Devin and Lefty, both $8 million plus. And then after that, I think it's a little questionable. They have ENU, Connor, Barney Rebel, and Murray. You know, they're going to be the second and third line. If Devin and Lefty play together, there should be absolutely no issues. If they split them up, then maybe you add a little more depth to Dallas, but this team is stacked. There's no other way to put it. I don't think they have the best defense, but they definitely have 2 of the best defensemen in the league. And then between the pipes, they acquired Bakes from Philly and re-signed him for $1 million. Bakes is a phenomenal goalie when he's on his game. I look to him possibly being a Vezina candidate this season with the team he's got in front of him. So, all right. So that's it for my power rankings or bidding recap, whatever you want to call it. That's about all I have to offer. Obviously, no games are played yet. Season starts in a few hours. Going to get this video out to you guys tonight. I need people for the show. Crosby is going to plan on being on the show. He wasn't able to make it for this week, but anybody that is interested on being on the show, just send me a message. Of course, I'd like to do guests as well. If you want to be a guest, just, again, send me a message, Xbox Live, LG, don't matter. I'll answer to them rather quickly. I normally have I'll get it on my phone. So, yeah, that's about wraps up for the show. I thank you all for watching. Hope everyone enjoyed, and good luck to everyone in week 1.